Number 51. What frequencies are monitored by most flight service stations other than 121.5? Flight service stations and supplemental weather service locations, SWSL, have assigned frequencies for their different functions. For example, in Alaska, certain FSSs provide local airport advisory on 123.6 MHZs, or other frequencies that can be found in the chart supplement for the U.S. If in doubt about what to use, 122.2 MHZ is designated as a common en route simplex frequency at most flight service stations. Exam tip: be prepared to explain how you will obtain updated weather information while en route. Know how to contact a flight service station along your route of flight. Number 52. What is an RCO? RCO is a remote communications outlet. A remote communications outlet, RCO, is an unmanned communications facility remotely controlled by air traffic control personnel, established for the purpose of providing ground-to-ground communications between ATC and pilots located at satellite airports. ATC may use the RCO to deliver en route clearances and departure authorizations and to acknowledge IFR cancellations or departure landing times. As a secondary function, RCOs may be used for advisory purposes whenever the aircraft is below the coverage of a primary air-ground frequency. Number 53. How can a pilot determine what frequency is appropriate for activating his or her VFR flight plan once airborne? 2 ways. First, ask the flight service station briefer during the pre-flight weather briefing, or second, consult the communications section under flight service for the airport of departure in the chart supplement for the U.S. Question 54. What is the meaning of a heavily lined blue box surrounding a nav aid frequency, or the chart legend? A heavily lined blue box surrounding the nav aid station data indicates flight service station frequencies 121.5, 122.2, 243.0, and 255.4 are available. Number 55. What would a frequency be printed on top of a heavily lined box? Or why would a frequency be printed on top of a heavily lined box? This usually means that the frequency is available in addition to the standard flight service station frequencies. 56. What is the meaning of a thin-lined blue box surrounding a nav aid frequency? A plain box without frequencies on top indicates that there are no standard flight service frequencies available. These nav aids will have a no voice symbol underlined under the frequency. Number 57. Why would a frequency be printed on top of a thin-lined blue box? These frequencies are the best frequencies to use in the immediate vicinity of the nav aid site and will ensure reception by the controlling flight service station at low altitudes without terrain interference. They will normally be followed by an R, which indicates that the flight service station can receive only on that frequency. You transmit on that frequency. The pilot will listen for a response over the nav aid frequency. Number 58. How can a pilot determine the availability of HIWAS when looking at a VFR sectional chart? Nav aids that have HIWAS capability are depicted on sectional charts with an H in the upper right corner of the identification box. Number 59. What meaning does the letter T in a solid blue circle appearing in the top of the right corner of a nav aid frequency box have? In Alaska only, a transcribed weather broadcast is available. A TWEB is a continuous recording of meteorological and aeronautical information that is broadcast on L/MF or VOR facilities for pilots. Question 60. If an in-flight emergency requires immediate action by the pilot, what authority and responsibilities does he or she have? The pilot in command is directly responsible for and is the final authority as to the operation of that aircraft. In an in-flight emergency requiring immediate action, the pilot in command may deviate from any rule in Part 91 to the extent required to meet that emergency. Each pilot in command who deviates from a Part 91 rule shall, upon request from the administrator, send a written report of that deviation to the administrator. Number 61. What restrictions apply concerning the use of drugs and alcohol? No person may act or attempt to act as a crew member of a civil aircraft, A, within 8 hours after the consumption of any alcoholic beverage, B, while under the influence of alcohol, C, while using any drug that affects the person's faculties in any way contrary to safety, or D, while having an alcohol concentration of 0.04% or more in a blood or breath specimen. 61. Is it permissible for a pilot to allow a person who is obviously under the influence of intoxicating liquor or drugs to be carried aboard an aircraft? No. Except in an emergency, no pilot of a civil aircraft may allow a person who appears to be intoxicated or who demonstrates by manner of physical indications that the individual is under the influence of drugs, except a medical patient under proper care, to be carried in that aircraft. 63. May portable electronic devices be operated on board an aircraft? Aircraft operated by a holder of an air carrier operating certificate or an aircraft operating under IFR may not allow operation of electronic devices on board their aircraft. Exceptions are portable voice recorders, hearing aids, heart pacemakers, electric shavers, or any other device that the operator of the aircraft has determined will not cause interference with the navigation or communication system of the aircraft on which it is to be used. Number 64. Under what conditions may objects be dropped from an aircraft? No pilot in command of a civil aircraft may allow any object to be dropped from that aircraft in flight that creates a hazard to persons or property. However, this section does not prohibit the dropping of any object if reasonable precautions are taken to avoid injury or damage to persons or property. Number 65. Concerning a flight in the local area, if any pre-flight action required, is any pre-flight action required, and if so, what must it consist of? Yes, pilots must familiarize themselves with all available information concerning that flight, including runway lengths at airports of intended use and takeoff and landing distance data under existing conditions. 66. Pre-flight action, as required by regulation for all flights away from the vicinity of the departure airport, shall include a review of what specific information. For a flight under IFR or a flight not in the vicinity of an airport, NW CRAFT is an acronym. NOTAMs, N for NOTAMs, W for weather reports and forecasts, K for known air traffic control delays, R for runway lengths at airports of intended use, A, alternatives available if the planned flight can be completed, and F, fuel requirements. 67. Which person on board an aircraft are required to use seatbelts and when? Each person on board a U.S. registered civil aircraft must occupy an approved seat or berth with a safety belt, and if installed, shoulder harness, properly secured about him or her during movement on the surface, takeoff, and landing. However, a person who has not reached his or her second birthday and does not occupy or use any restraining device may be held by an adult who is occupying a seat or berth and a person on board for the purpose of engaging in sport parachuting may use the floor of the aircraft as a seat. Number 68. What responsibility does the pilot in command have concerning passengers and their use of seatbelts? No pilot may take off a U.S. registered civil aircraft unless the pilot in command of that aircraft ensures that each person on board is briefed on how to fasten and unfasten that person's safety belt and shoulder harness if installed. The pilot in command shall ensure that all persons on board have been notified to fasten their seatbelt and shoulder harnesses if installed before movement of the aircraft on the surface, takeoff, or landing. Number 69. When are flight crew members required to keep their seatbelts and shoulder harnesses fastened? During takeoff and landing, and while en route. Each required flight crew member shall keep his or her seatbelt fastened while at his or her station. During takeoff and landing, this includes shoulder harnesses if installed, unless it interferes with other required duties. Number 70. If operating an aircraft in close proximity to another, such as formation flight, what regulations apply? A. No person may operate an aircraft so close to another aircraft as to create a collision hazard. B. No person may operate an aircraft in formation flight except by arrangement with the pilot in command of each aircraft in the formation. And C. No person may operate an aircraft carrying passengers for hire in flight formation. 71. What is the order of right-of-way as applied to the different categories of aircraft? The answer in order of right-of-way is balloons, gliders, airships, airplanes, and rotorcraft, which are helicopters. Aircraft towing or refueling other aircraft have the right-of-way over all other engine-driven aircrafts. 72. What would an aircraft have the right-of-way over, or when? When would an aircraft have the right-of-way over all other aircraft? An aircraft in distress has the right-of-way over all other aircraft. Number 73. State the required action for each of the aircraft confrontations. Same category below. Converging, approaching head-on, and overtaking are the confrontations and what would be the action. For converging, which is smacking into each other, the aircraft on the right has the right of way. If you're approaching head-on, both aircraft shall alter course to the right. Overtaking, the aircraft being overtaken has the right of way. The pilot of the overtaking aircraft shall alter their course to the right. Number 74. What right-of-way rules apply when two or more aircraft are approaching an airport for the purpose of landing? Aircraft on final approach to land or while landing have the right-of-way over aircraft in flight or operating on the surface, except that they shall not take advantage of this rule to enforce an aircraft off the runway surface which has already landed and is attempting to make way for an aircraft on final approach. When two or more aircraft are approaching an airport for the purpose of landing, the aircraft at the lower altitude has the right of way, but it shall not take advantage of this rule to cut in front of another which is on final approach to land or to overtake that aircraft. 75. Unless otherwise authorized or required by air traffic control, what is the maximum indicated airspeed at which a person may operate an aircraft below 10,000 feet MSL? No person may operate an aircraft below 10,000 feet MSL at an indicated airspeed of more than 250 knots, which is 288 miles per hour.